This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. A new documentary about New York Governor Mario Cuomo will have its world premiere as part of the Tribeca Festival beginning tonight. The movie is titled Mario, and it sets the political leader's rise, governorship, and national popularity against the context of Ronald Reagan's administration, including Cuomo's famous speech at the 1984 Democratic Convention addressing Reagan directly.
There is despair, Mr. President, in the faces that you don't see, in the places that you don't visit, in your shining city.
The documentary Mario portrays the governor's gift as an orator and as a writer who painstakingly kept diaries which reveal his inner struggles and philosophies on public service. The film was directed by Peter, George, and Teddy Kuhnhart. Teddy and George join me now. Thank you for coming to the studio.
Thank you for having us.
Listeners, do you remember Mario Cuomo? What do you recall from his time as governor or even Secretary of State or Lieutenant Governor? Did you want him to run for president? How do you look back on his leadership now? Give us a call or text us at 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. One of the first people we see on screen is John Meacham. He's known as a presidential historian. Why did you want him to be the quote-unquote expert on Cuomo?
Well, I should start by saying that John Meacham is a friend of ours who we featured in the HBO documentary The Soul of America. So we got to know John pretty well, and we also know that he is the Reagan historian. And we thought it was very important that Reagan be represented correctly. Mm-hmm. And no better person than John could do that. And he put it into context who Mario was up against.
Yeah, you opened the film with Reagan. Explain why you wanted to open a film about Mario Cuomo with Reagan.
Well, we wanted to start the film by having a context of today. And so when you hear Make America Great Again by Ronald Reagan, it immediately sinks it into where we are today. And when you have John Meacham make the parallel to wanting to study someone like Mario Cuomo the same way you should understand and remember Hamilton, it really puts him on a new level of not just in the New York zeitgeist, but also on the national level, which was important for us.
George, Meacham says that Mario Cuomo came from the tradition of Roosevelt and the New Deal because he grew up with that. How did his family benefit from New Deal policies?
Yeah, so when FDR passed the New Deal in the 30s, Mario Cuomo's parents both came from Italy. They didn't speak English. Mario didn't even speak English until he was 8 years old. And the whole point of the New Deal was to set up a government safety net that allowed everyone to prosper, especially those who were in such need at the time. And Mario's parents were were beneficiaries of this policy. That stayed with Mario for his whole life. He believed that government, if done well, can help. And that's a very important part that we wanted to explore, because that without that policy in place by FDR, I don't think Mario would have been who he was today.
Teddy, how did Cuomo's Italian identity shape his politics?
It shaped his whole life, not just his politics.
Yeah.
We believe he suffered from immigrant trauma. We don't necessarily talk about that directly, but indirectly in the film. He was always considered in his less than. Whether it was not being able to get a law firm job, whether it was never being taken seriously with an Italian last name, mm-hmm. it really defined his character, and he never forgot his roots.
Yeah, I didn't know that he didn't speak English until he was 8 years old.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. How do you think his being Italian American, shaped his identity and shaped who he was?
Well, I actually think it also identified the significance of family for him. The Italian family experience for him it's all about being around the kitchen table. It's all about being home, having a home-cooked meal. We have a scene in the film where after he gives his amazing keynote speech, he doesn't stay around and take the accolades and be with everyone. He took a red eye, flew home, and he wanted to be back in New York with his family. So his whole world was surrounded by his culture and where he came from.
We're talking about a new documentary titled Mario about former New York Governor Mario Cuomo. We speak to directors Teddy and George Kuhnhart. It premieres as part of the Tribeca Film Festival tonight. Listeners, how do you remember Mario Cuomo? What do you recall from his time as governor? Our number is 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. How do you look back on his leadership now? 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. Teddy, at the core of the documentary are these diaries that Cuomo kept. When and where were these diaries from?
He kept diaries throughout his whole political life, and to us, they were the big unlock. Mm-hmm. They allowed us to see the man behind the politician, the man behind the lawyer. We were able to see the internal struggles that he was going through, how it was being a father, how it was being a son. It really allowed us to humanize him and understand him, both sides of him. So without the diaries, I don't think we would have been able to get to the depth that we were able to get to in the film.
Yeah, Chris Cuomo describes him as staying up all night at his desk, just writing.
Yeah, he was, and we have some amazing footage that we found with access from the Cuomo family. After building so much trust between us and their family, they unlocked all the personal photos, home movies, things of that nature, and allowed us to use the diaries, obviously. And we found a VHS of Mario sitting behind a desk, and the camera pans behind, and you see him writing in the diary. It's the only footage that we found of that. And you really see he's up at 3 in the morning writing, reflecting. He really put in the hours more than anyone I've ever seen.
But guys, one thing is, you say the viewers should call in and tell memories of Mario, but George and I are of a younger generation where we weren't familiar with Mario. He was not a household name. We saw the Tappan Zee Bridge become the Mario Cuomo Bridge, but other than that, we weren't very aware of him. We were well aware of Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo, but we were not very aware of Mario until we did a film on President Obama, and David Axelrod said, in order to understand Obama's 04 speech, you have to go back to Mario's 84 speech.
See, I remember him because I'm old. And it's why I wanted to go to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service. I ended up going to Brown, but I thought I was going to be the governor of New Jersey when I was 17 years old because of Mario Cuomo. Some politicians like him, not his party, whomever, but just their belief in service is what I really believed in as well. And I was like, that's what politicians used to believe in.
Well, yeah, you used the word earlier, moral. He lived by a code of moral leadership, a moral compass. And in all of our films, we try and find that as the centerpiece of all the people that we do what we like to call a character study on. We've done, as Teddy mentioned, President Obama. We've done Gloria Steinem. We just did a film on Katharine Graham. All walks of life, Brian Stevenson, different people of different groups of different backgrounds of their profession to where they live to what they fight for, but they all have a moral guiding compass, and that's what really drew us. Besides just his beautiful speech and the way he governed, he stood for the right reasons and stood up for the people that needed it.
Let's talk to our listeners. Craig is calling in from Morganville. Hey, Craig, thanks for calling. All of it, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing? What I remember with him was that he was very good at reaching across the aisle, which a lot of politicians, barely any, do now. And you could tell he might not have been the best governor, but you always knew he was really trying to look out for his state and his constituents, even though he was up against a lot of poppycock, if you know what I mean. And he also was not afraid to admit if he made a mistake. I forgot what the example was, but you could tell he was trying to be genuine.
Thank you so much for calling, Craig. This text says, I wanted Mario Cuomo to run for president. I never understood why he didn't. And you get into this in the documentary. Will you share a little bit?
You know, I wasn't surprised he didn't run for president. He didn't want it. He didn't want to put his family through the campaign of running for president. It just wasn't in his DNA. He loved the law, and what surprised us more was why he didn't accept the Supreme Court nomination. Every son or daughter wants to please their parents, and Mario's mother wanted him to be a judge. That was the holy grail. And here he had the ability to take the highest judge seat in this country, and he didn't. And again, I think what George mentioned about family, I think it all goes back to family. He wanted to be with his family. He didn't want to live in D.C., but we're still unsure of that.
Let's talk to Gregory, who's calling from Brooklyn. Hey, Gregory, thank you so much for making the time to call. All of it, you're on the air.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I wanted to call in for multiple reasons. One, I had the distinct pleasure and privilege of knowing Governor Cuomo personally for over 15 years. I was very fortunate. I don't know if this is covered in the documentary, but one of the things that Mario was extremely passionate about was his weekend basketball league. And I don't know if it's mentioned in the documentary, but for 20, 30 plus years, and even when he was the governor, the Gov was known for his basketball runs and his competitive spirit on the basketball court. And yes, Mario did play well into his 70s during the league, but I just wanted to share with your audience, he was so committed and so passionate about the basketball league. It didn't matter where he was in the world. He would always fly back and made sure he got home by Friday evening so that he could be at the various gyms that we used to play in. And I had the pleasure of playing on the Gov's team, which was called the Blue Team. And, I consider it one of my great honors to be able to spend so much time with him. And, what I just wanted to really convey about the governor, which I think the director who's done this documentary has done a great job already, talking about is everything that the Gov did was based on a moral code and moral standards. And in this day and age where morality is not spoken about probably at all anymore in politics, we could certainly use a lot more Governor Cuomo's just in terms of the character and his values and how meaningful they were to them and how he governed him and lived his life. So
thanks so much for calling, Gregory. Thank you for sharing that story. You do get into the basketball, George.
Thank you, Gregory, for calling in and telling us that story. We did interview a handful of people who played in the basketball league. Mike Klein as one of the folks, and a handful of other people in it. We do cover him, his love of basketball, his love and his athleticism in baseball, and his career in the minors for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we have some amazing footage of him and Chris playing basketball together that I don't believe had been seen before because it was such an unearthed gem. But all of our materials are available at lifestories.org, where we make available the interviews, the film, everything in the fall. And so all the interviewees that discuss the basketball league will be in the extensively available for free.
Let's talk to Sharon, who's calling in from Brooklyn. Hey, Sharon, thank you so much for calling WNYC. You're on the air.
Hi there. And I wanted to say that I very much agree with the prior caller and with your guest about his moral compass. What I most remember about Mario Cuomo was his stance on the death penalty. At a time when everybody was cracking down during and after the crack epidemic, throwing people in jail, 3 strikes, he was very eloquent when talking about his opposition to the death penalty, which really ran counter to the time. And he spoke about his faith, but it really came from his own personal moral compass. And I listened to him when he spoke, and I didn't agree with him at the time, but I have come to agree with him. And I've always remembered listening to him in an interview on WNYC many years ago when he talked about his opposition to the death penalty and how it was grounded in his own personal moral and religious beliefs.
Thank you so much for calling. We're talking about the documentary Mario. We're speaking to its filmmakers, Teddy and George Kuhnhart. We'll have more after a quick break. This is all of it. You're listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. We're talking about a new documentary titled Mario about former New York Governor Mario Cuomo. I'm speaking to directors Teddy and George Kuhnhart. It premieres as part of the Tribeca Festival tonight. Listeners, how do you remember Mario Cuomo? What do you recall from his time as governor? How do you look back on his leadership? Our phone number is 212-433-WNYC, 212-433-9692. Teddy, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to a couple of our callers. I got sort of carried away. There were a couple of callers that said things that really resonated with you.
Sure. His stance on the death penalty was mentioned in the previous call, and we do talk about that in the film a lot. In fact, Mario tells a story that his mother advised Mario to break his moral code, agree to the death penalty, and then after he wins the election, do whatever you want. And Mario, to his credit, said, no. That is not my belief. That is not who I am, and I will not do that. And even if it costs me votes, I'm going to be who I am. And to me, it was a huge, interesting point that his mother was trying to get him to win, and at the cost of his own conscience.
George, how would Mario Cuomo identify himself on the political spectrum? To the left, to the center, or did he not think that way?
No, there's actually a great podcast story that we followed before doing this called The Last Liberal. And that's how we think of Mario and how he would have seen himself. He was he believed in liberal values. He believed that the government can help, and he believed in policies and governance that benefit everyone versus just himself. And so he was a pretty firm believer in this.
Let's talk to Irene, who's calling from Woodcliff Lake. Hey, Irene, thank you so much for making the time to call All of It. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Although I live in New Jersey now, I grew up in Yonkers in an Italian-American family. In fact, half first generation, my father coming from Italy, and have grandparents who came to the U.S. from Italy as well. And what I remember in growing up as a child, really, I would sum my thoughts on Mario with one word: pride. And I just always remember, the adults talking when I was a child of the pride of having him in office, and also morals, that they were proud that he was representing Italian Americans in such a great light, that he got a break, right? He finally got a big break, was recognized. And again, the word pride and morals are really what sticks with me, when I was growing up as a child, hearing the adults around me talk about him.
Thank you for calling. Let's talk to Marcia in Brooklyn. Hey, Marcia, thank you so much for calling All of It. What's your question?
Hi, Allison. Thanks. Yes to the death penalty. Great position. Yes to that 84th speech during the Republicanots' first evangelical Christian era. But in New York State and City, we have a lot of difficult Democratic Party committees that he had to rise through and work with that really bent over backwards for the construction and development industries that actually foreshadowed the crisis we're having today with unaffordable housing. And he had to make compromises with so many of those in that industry. And I'm wondering if your documentary covers any of that and looks at some of those areas where maybe the moral compass really did have to be stretched.
Thank you for your question. The documentary touches upon some of that, but Mario was a reluctant politician. He didn't want to be a politician because he didn't want to have to bend his moral compass. He didn't want to have to deal with the people you're mentioning. He didn't like politics. He didn't like politicians, and I'm not quite sure about the housing of today you're talking about, but I know that he was difficult because he didn't want to bend, and that's how I feel.
Did you want to add anything?
No, that's.
We have an interesting text, and I would be interesting what you think about it. It says, "I'm concerned this doc is a love fest for Mario Cuomo, who used to be a hero of mine until I learned about some bullying behavior by him, along with some homophobia and some antagonistic behavior towards his rival. Does the film address any of this?"
So we dive into, it's definitely not a love fest or hagiography or anything. We take a we're independent documentary journalists. We're very respectful of the process that we do. We have a large team. Took us 2 years to make this film, and in all of our research and all of our storytelling, we dive into warts and all. I mean, there are things where he was a bully with the press. There was a whole scene about how he would show his frustration and his anger could come out. We have the journalist Peg Breen talks about how he was probably the smartest person in the room, and he believed it, and he probably was also the smartest person in the room. But
he made sure everyone in the room knew that he was the smartest person.
So there's definitely, it is not just a love fest by any means, but we respect him, and we respect his moral code, and that's what we wanted to shine a light on.
Let's talk to Josh in Brooklyn. Hey, Josh, thanks so much for calling all of it. You're on the air. Is Josh there? No luck? Josh, you there?
Oh, hi. Yeah. Sorry. I remember very well his 84 speech, and one of the things that I remember so well is his emphasis on the idea of community, that America really depends on the idea of a commonwealth, not individual alone, and that's in such sharp contrast to the kind of political sensibility we have today. One other question I have, I know that unfortunately and tragically there was criticism of Cuomo's an Italian American, that his opponents implied that he must have had some kind of mafia ties. And I wonder if the filmmakers address that at all. Thank you.
Thank you for your question and for your statement. No, we don't go into any of those allegations and those rumors. We have a beautiful scene where he and Speaker Pelosi actually go to Italy after the earthquake over there, and he comforts this community by not just being there as a representative and as a governor, but as an Italian immigrant who speaks the language, who comforts this community. And we in fact, he would actually be pretty upset with the stereotype that gets thrown around there. So our feeling is, unless there's any valid proof, we didn't go into any kind of hearsay. But
we did spend ample time researching and could not find anything.
Cuomo was a Catholic. He separated his personal beliefs from his political beliefs when it came to abortion. How did Mario Cuomo walk the line between the personal and the political? What do you say, Teddy?
He was respectful of personal and political, but he wasn't going to jeopardize how he felt about his own life and the life, his moral. Again, sorry, I'm stumbling here.
That's okay.
Go ahead, George.
Well, I was going to say, what we explore in the film is that he believed in a woman's right to choose. And he believed that even though that's completely the opposite of what is a belief of the Catholic Church, he did not want to waver. And he spoke at Notre Dame. He gave this one of the most profound speeches we had ever heard, honestly. But even on some level, more of an amazing speech than his 84 DNC speech. And the result was he was excommunicated. And this was the hardest thing in his life, was not being able to take communion and be welcome in the church afterwards. But he had a guiding light, and he stuck with it. And so to us, it shows that if there's something he believes in, even if there's a higher calling that he's not supposed to, he still sticks with it. And that's what we explored.
In the film, he ran for a fourth term in 1994. He was defeated by George Pataki. He had a low favorability rating heading into that election, Teddy. What happened in Cuomo's final term that he lost?
First, he would say the budget. The budget was out of control. He couldn't get a hold of it. It wasn't resolved. He didn't want to leave New York, possibly to run for president and leave New York in this state. And I just think he was tired.
He was sort of done a little bit?
He was sort of done. And I'm not sure he should have run.
Yeah, he was ready to be a teacher. He was ready to do that last phase of life of being grandpa and being with his family. So it seemed like that it kind of run its course, and it was the right time to, for him, unfortunately, lose. And the new wave came in, but he enjoyed the last phase of his life.
And the last phase of his life did not agree to being on the Supreme Court, although Bill Clinton wanted to nominate him. Yes.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? You would think that would have been a definite.
So what did he do in his final years?
He was grandpa first and foremost. He loved his grandkids. He got many, many, many granddaughters, and then finally he got a grandson named Mario. He taught the law. He did the speaking tour, and he just enjoyed watching his family.
Let's try to get this last call. It's kind of funny. Ingrid, can you tell this story in about 40 seconds?
I sure can. Hi. I couldn't agree with all the previous callers about respecting and admiring Mario Cuomo, but I do have a funny story. I worked at the Water Club, which is a restaurant in Manhattan, and Governor Cuomo came in with his entourage, and I took his order, and he ordered a filet. And I said, "Oh, how would you like that cooked?" And he said, "Medium rare." And so I put in the order, and the order came out, and I went to serve it to him, and he looked at me like I had three heads. He said, "I ordered the filet." I said, "This is the filet mignon." He said, "I ordered a filet of fish."
That's great.
Thanks for sharing that story. The film is Mario. It is debuting tonight at the Tribeca Film Festival. I've been speaking with its directors, Tony and George Kuhnhart. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
And that is all of it. I'm Allison Stewart. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you. I'll meet you back here tomorrow.